Imagine waking up in the morning feeling calm, fresh, and ready for the day. But just a few minutes after interacting with a certain person, your energy suddenly drops, your mind feels heavy, your mood changes, and somehow you feel emotionally exhausted without even knowing why. Many people experience this regularly. It could be a colleague who constantly complains, a friend who only calls when they have problems, or a family member who somehow leaves you feeling drained after every conversation. This experience is surprisingly common, and today we are going to explore why it happens and what it really means. In recent years, people have started calling these individuals toxic people or energy vampires. The internet is full of advice on how to deal with them. Things like avoiding them, protecting your energy, or surrounding yourself with positive vibrations. But according to the famous Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, the truth behind this experience is far more complex. Jung believed that the problem is not always the other person. Sometimes, the real reason we feel drained lies deep within our own psyche. Jung introduced an idea called psychic contamination. It sounds complicated, but the concept is actually simple. It means that when we interact with someone emotionally intense, someone full of guilt, neediness, fear, or manipulation, their emotional state can unconsciously mix with ours. And if we have unresolved emotional wounds inside us, those feelings resonate with our own hidden struggles. In other words, we don't just absorb their emotions randomly. We absorb them because something similar already exists within us. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever noticed that some people can deal with difficult individuals without feeling drained, while others feel completely exhausted? According to Jung, this difference exists because certain people carry deeper emotional patterns formed in childhood. Many individuals who constantly feel emotionally drained were raised in environments where they learned that love and acceptance depended on helping others, fixing problems, or carrying other people's emotional burdens. As children, they may have learned that being supportive, understanding, and always available was the only way to receive affection. Over time, this pattern becomes automatic. In adulthood, they unconsciously take on the role of the rescuer, the caretaker, the emotional support system for everyone around them. They listen, they help, they sacrifice their energy again and again. And while it may look like kindness on the surface, deep inside it often comes from a fear of rejection or a desire to be needed. Now, before we go deeper into this fascinating idea, if you're enjoying this type of content and want to explore more insights about psychology, self-awareness, and personal growth, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support really helps us continue creating meaningful content like this. Now let's continue. Carl Jung believed that every human personality has certain blind spots. These blind spots are parts of ourselves that we rarely notice, but they strongly influence our behavior and emotions. One of the most important of these blind spots is what Jung called the inferior function. According to his theory, every person has 4 main psychological functions: thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuition. One of these becomes dominant in our personality, while another remains underdeveloped and mostly unconscious. This weaker function becomes a vulnerable point in our psychological structure. It's like a small gap in our emotional armor. Because it is not fully developed, it can easily be influenced by other people's emotional energy. When someone with intense emotions interacts with us, that influence enters through this weak point, creating confusion, exhaustion, and emotional imbalance. For example, someone who is very logical and analytical might struggle with emotions. When they encounter someone who constantly expresses emotional chaos, complaints, drama, emotional manipulation, it overwhelms them. They don't fully understand what they're feeling, but the emotional intensity drains them. But Jung didn't stop there. He believed that another powerful force is also involved in these situations, something he called the shadow. The shadow represents the hidden side of our personality, the parts of ourselves we deny, reject, or refuse to acknowledge. These could be feelings like anger, jealousy, insecurity, the desire for control, or the fear of being rejected. Most people prefer to believe they are always kind, rational, and fair. So whenever they experience darker emotions, they push them into the unconscious mind. But those emotions don't disappear. Instead, they become part of the shadow. And here's where things get interesting. Jung observed that the people who trigger us the most often reflect aspects of our own shadow. The colleague who seems arrogant may mirror our own suppressed desire to be more assertive. The manipulative person who frustrates us might reveal our own hidden fear of confrontation. The emotionally needy friend might expose our unconscious need to feel important. When we encounter these reflections, it creates tension inside us. Our conscious mind wants to reject them, but our unconscious recognizes them. That inner conflict consumes a huge amount of emotional energy, and that is one of the reasons why certain relationships feel so exhausting. But the solution Jung proposed was not to run away from people or isolate ourselves from everyone who causes discomfort. Instead, he believed the real solution lies in self-awareness and psychological integration. This means slowly becoming aware of our hidden patterns, understanding our emotional triggers, and strengthening the parts of ourselves that we have ignored. It's not easy. In fact, Jung described this process as going against our natural psychological habits. Our mind prefers comfort, routine, and familiar roles. If you've always been the helper, your mind will resist changing that role. If you've always avoided conflict, setting boundaries will feel uncomfortable at first. But every time you choose awareness instead of automatic reaction, something inside you changes. When you learn to say no without guilt, you reclaim your energy. When you stop trying to solve everyone's problems, you create emotional balance. When you become aware of your own shadow, you stop projecting it onto others. Slowly, your inner structure becomes stronger and more complete. And something very interesting begins to happen. The people who once drained you start having less influence over your life. Not because you forced them away, but because the psychological pattern that connected you to them no longer exists. The truth is, emotional manipulators and energy-draining individuals often connect with people who unconsciously allow those dynamics. When you become more self-aware, more grounded, and more emotionally independent, the connection weakens. In a way, it's like changing your internal signal. You no longer broadcast the emotional patterns that attracted draining relationships. As a result, those people naturally move away, and your interactions with others become healthier and more balanced. Carl Jung once said that true enlightenment does not come from imagining light, but from making the darkness conscious. In other words, real personal growth happens when we face the parts of ourselves we've been avoiding, and when we do that work, something powerful happens. We stop feeling like victims of other people's behavior. Instead, we gain clarity, confidence, and emotional independence. Suddenly, the world feels lighter, relationships become simpler, and the energy you once lost trying to carry everyone else's emotional weight finally returns to you. So the next time you feel emotionally drained after interacting with someone, pause for a moment and ask yourself a deeper question. Instead of asking, "Why is this person draining me?" try asking, "What part of me is reacting to this, and what can it teach me about myself?" Sometimes, the people who exhaust us the most are actually showing us the parts of ourselves that are waiting to be understood. And once we understand them, we become stronger, clearer, and more complete. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more deep insights into psychology, self-awareness, and personal growth. Because the journey of understanding the mind is one of the most powerful journeys a person can ever take.